Hi there guys, what we have here is a Dettol tub with body parts in because when I went, after I'd sanded it and I went for another coat of primer, I'd stirred up some settled sediment in the bottom of the jar of the primer I'd decanted, and although it seemed like it was mixed up, I put an extra bit of cellulose thinners and gave it a really good mix up, and although it seemed like it was mixed up, it still came out very sort of sandy. And once it had dried, it was literally drying before it hit the model, and once it had dried you could just brush it off with your fingers, and unfortunately it built up some high spots and made a real mess. So what I've had to do is strip that. I've had to get some more primer, and the primer, I've actually gotten some white primer because I thought I'd give that a go. So that means I've got to strip the paint off all of the body colour panels that I've currently done. So we've got the front upper fairing and the main body with the tank and seat unit in there, and then I've got the two side panels and the fill panel for the top, for the upper panel that the clock sits in. I've got those to strip and the wing mirrors as well. So I'm going to have to strip those and do that again. In the meantime, I've got the white primer to decant, and I'm going to do a separate little video on that to try something else out. Here on the bench we've got the body panels that you can see have been stripped back to white plastic. The wheels also, the rear and front wheels. These have been stripped back to white plastic. Typically, I don't like to use white primer on white parts and then white paint on white primer because it's difficult to see if you've got good coverage, but it's gonna logically give a better finish because the paler the pigment in paint, the more the base layer will show through. So although I typically spray on white paint onto grey to know that I've got good coverage, I thought I would give the white primer a try. What this meant was that I would need to strip all of the body parts that were going to be painted white that I'd already painted grey, and the upside of that was this was an ideal opportunity to prove to myself a question that I'd asked when I did the Dettol paint stripping video. If you've not seen that, if you're interested in stripping paint for model kits, then flick back through my modelling section of my channel and you'll see one on stripping model paint with Dettol. Now at the time I'd stripped enamel paint, I stripped acrylic paint, but I'd never actually tried stripping lacquer or cellulose based paint, which this primer is, and I wasn't 100% sure if it would work. As it turns out, it does. It works exactly every bit as well as stripping enamel or acrylic paint, and leave it soaking in the Dettol. It practically falls off. Give it a brush, a rinse, and then a good scrub to clean it, and you're good to go again. So for those who were unsure, I did have somebody comment on that video saying that it did, but obviously it's good to see it for yourself. So yes, so we know it does. In the meantime, while I was waiting for that, I've done a little bit of detail painting on the engine, and I'll just give you a close-up of that at the moment. You can see the engine, which has been sprayed in a satin black as per the directions, and having looked at some reference pictures of the Tesi engine online, which is essentially the same as the or the model kit anyway, is the same as the 916 engine. The sprue, that's something to note in fact. The sprue is exactly the same as the sprue that you get in the Tamiya Ducati 916 kit, which is also the same as the one in the 888 kit, barring an altered portion at the bottom, which has had a certain section of the 916 kit snipped off, and then an additional bit for the open belt assembly and such, an open clutch assembly of the 888 kit. But having looked at some reference photos online, that's been painted up according to the call-outs in the reference photos, with satin black and then certain parts picked out and highlighted to show the bolt heads and such, and the same on this side. Obviously this piece up here is going to be covered by the belt cover assembly, which once painted will go on there like that. So that's the engine detailed up a little. Still needs a little bit more work. I've got the oil window to do a little bit down here. Yeah, it needs a little bit more work, and I might do a bit of dry brushing on some of the high spots just to bring it out a little. I don't know, I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. While we're down here in this section, what I've got here is the two halves of the frame. Now hopefully you'll be able to see if I just that you'll be able to see how reflective that is. This is Alclad 2 polished aluminium, and you'll notice also the little Bimota logos I've picked out in red just to make that stand out a little bit more, just to add a little personal touch. What I'm going to do now with these is coat them with either a satin or a matte clear to dull down that finish, because although Bimota use billet machined aluminium, which is very shiny on their bikes, this is probably a bit too shiny, and depending on how that finish looks, I might yet strip it and repaint it with a less shiny aluminium. I'm not sure, we'll see how that goes. And as much as I do like the Alclad high gloss metallic finishes, it's a case of balancing what's appropriate for the kit. I've got the rear piece painted up with the using polished aluminium as well on the brake light and the indicators, as you can see. So, and the brake light there, which is obviously more visible, nice and reflective, so that when the red coated rear light lens gets glued onto there, that will look nice and realistic. I decided to go with a Humbrol enamel matte clear and sprayed the parts. So this is them after the matte clear. As you can see, it's quite a difference. And move that around to get reflections for you. I'm not sort of 100% sure yet, but yeah, I think I'm quite pleased with that. I did use the satin varnish. The reason I went with matte is I used the satin varnish on a Honda NR model kit that I built some time ago on the frame rails, because they were polished aluminium. So to get the right kind of look, I did the same thing. I used polished aluminium and then satin varnish to dull it down a little bit, because it's, as you saw, it's a little too shiny on its own. And I'm not sure if either of maybe if it's just the thickness, because I did put a reasonably good wet coat on, or if it's just me being too picky at the moment. But I think I quite like that. But I'm sort of at the is it a bit too dull sort of stage looking at it. But no, I think I'm quite happy with that actually. The more I look at it, the more I like it. And I would have liked it to have been a little shinier still, but I might try giving it a bit of a buff and see what that does. So same with the rear and front swing arms, and then I will eventually do the same with the control arms and the other bits that are the same colour as the frame. And the point that we're at just at the moment is all of the body colour panels have now been resprayed in white primer. It's considerably trickier to spray than the grey. I don't know if it's just because it's white primer or if it's just because it's more translucent, it's harder to cover. So but I did get a couple of runs that are going to need a quick buff, a quick sand, and obviously you can see there the side frames, and in the background the front swing arm assembly, and of course the exhaust pipe assembly there, which has been sprayed with stainless steel, and then it has been touched up, sort of heat treated with Tamiya's set D of the applicator pad. And I'll show you that in well, possibly in the next video. I don't know if this will be up before the next bit that I film, but that's where we're at just now. Everything back in white primer after the old primer's been stripped off the body panels, and that will be ready for paint by tomorrow, but it'll probably be a couple of days before I can get paint onto that.